Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. This is our December Lunch and Learn recording with Christopher Phelps, Mike Zlotnick, and I'm Deanna Boring. Tempo Family of Funds and Syndications is our main business, and I just wanted to put out the legal disclaimer that this presentation is for educational purposes only. This is not a recommendation to sell. If you are interested in any of our investment opportunities, please reach out to us, get any legal documents you need to go over with your tax, legal, or financial advisor so that you can make any decisions based on your specific situation. I wanted to let you all know that we do have over 250 podcast episodes recorded now. If you would like to watch those, check out our YouTube channel. This QR code will take you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. This episode will also be on there so that you can rewatch it if you didn't get to see the whole thing, and so you don't miss anything that we do with all of our YouTube recordings and podcasts. I wanted to let you know, if you are planning to do a Roth conversion, please consider the Tempo Advantage Fund. It has a strategic strategy that is specifically advantageous to IRA investors. There is no UBIT or UDFI because you are a lender in mezzanine debt. This fund is open to accredited investors only, and it is providing 8% annual preferred returns quarterly with 16 to 18% projected targeted annual returns. And there's also performance split potential for the upside on these deals. The QR code in the corner will sign you up for our latest deals, or the, you can schedule a call. You can also see our book, The 10 Things You Need to Know Before Investing into a Real Estate Fund. There is also a subscription point available for Tempo Income Fund, January 1st. If you would like to come into this fund, which is a diversified, conservative income-focused strategy of commercial real estate investments all across the United States and different types of investment assets and different strategies. Not only is it equity, but there is some debt as well. This fund has been around for a while. It's evergreen, which means you can compound your distributions. They're also quarterly, and it's been returning 10 to 13% is the targeted, but it's been outdoing that since inception. There's only a 2-year commitment period. So if this is something that interests you, please reach out. I would love to discuss it more. And without further ado, I want to introduce Chris Phelps. He is our guest today. I am really excited to have him. Last summer, we were in North Carolina, and there were the Cialdini Institute. Dr. Cialdini was actually presenting, and he talked about some of the things we're going to talk about today. And later on, I met Chris at a different conference, and I was just so excited to find out that he later on was promoted to be the US CEO for the Cialdini Institute. I actually just finished the Cialdini Persuasion book. That thing took forever. Oh my gosh, it's the longest audiobook I've ever heard. It's like 50 hours. Yeah. But I did finish it on 2 times speed recently on my long drive. And I was really excited about that because I really enjoy learning about psychology topics. And so this is actually a really big treat for us, because usually we talk about investment things, but I think this actually could apply to pretty much anything in life. So thanks, Chris. Thanks for joining us today. I'm just letting you take it from here because I know you have a lot to cover today.
Yes, thank you, Deanna, and Big Mike. Thanks for being here, and I appreciate you guys both for inviting me. If I sound a little funky, it's because I'm just coming off being sick all week, and finally broke my fever last night. So hey, all right.
Wow, congratulations!
Yeah,
everyone's getting sick right now, it seems.
Tell you, it's brutal. And so back in the saddle again. So if I sound weird, I apologize for that. As Deanna said, for those of you guys that don't know me, I'm the new US CEO of the Cialdini Institute. I've been a personalized trainer for Dr. Cialdini. We call it a Cialdini Method Certified Trainer for over 12 years now. So I got to personally train under him for over a year. And my background, of course, is in dentistry. I'm a dentist by trade. Or as I like to say, I'm an entrepreneur who happens to be a pretty good dentist. And so I built not only multiple dental practices, but then I built multiple dental support companies. Startups, turnarounds are kind of my niche, so to speak. And so when we were forming the Institute as a way to kind of spread the message of influence and persuasion to the masses, because before now it's been kind of a closely guarded secret, if you will. How do you take these principles above and beyond what the book covers? You had to come to us directly, but of course now with the Institute, you've got an online place where we can teach folks these things. I was honored that he asked me to lead the U.S. division. And so let me pull up my slides here. My purpose today and the purpose of my talk, and as Deanna said, this can apply to anything. It can apply, of course, to people in sales. It can apply to people in marketing. It can apply to people in HR services. In essence, if you in your day-to-day routines or activities are interacting with another human person, this stuff applies, right? Because what it speaks to is, at its core, what we as individuals ultimately use as the drivers to make our decisions. And of course, this is just a small piece of a much larger training that we offer. As I said, there's over 10 hours of content learning from Dr. Cialdini at the Institute that you can learn. There's in-person trainings. There's all kinds of things that we offer. But I wanted to leave you guys with some insights on mindsets and why do people say no to us, number one, and how can we leverage Cialdini's principles to counter a no for whatever it is we're going to be asking for, whatever requests we're going to be making of them. So to start, let's do a little test, right? So you're going to see Daniel Simons here from Harvard is going to ask you a question. There'll be two sets of players wearing white shirts and players wearing black shirts. And he's going to ask you to count the number of times the players wearing white pass the basketball. So let's see if you can get the correct answer. Now, I'm not going to lie. The first time I watched this, I did not get the answer correct. So apparently I can't count. So Big Mike, Deanna, maybe you guys will do better in your counting, but let's see.
The solution. Count how many times the players wearing white pass the ball.
All right. What do you guys think?
I got 15 and I saw a gorilla walk by.
Mike, what do you get?
I'm a mathematician. I should know how to count, but my observation skills are not that good. So I came up with 13. And yes, a gorilla walked by. I don't know what gorilla had to do with passing the ball, but that's a separate question.
Well, first I got 15 originally myself, so that tells you that we're not right.
Did you spot the gorilla?
Now the question is, what's interesting? 90% of dentists and other medical professionals do not see the gorilla in this video. Usually about 50% of the average everyday person does see the gorilla. So it's impressive that you guys saw that. But if you saw the gorilla or not, right, did you notice that the curtains changed color or that one of the players totally left the game? So,
No, I didn't notice that.
Let's see.
Oh, I see now because it was red.
Yeah.
Did you spot the gorilla? For people who haven't seen or heard about a video like this before, about half missed the gorilla. If you knew about the gorilla, you probably saw it. But did you notice the curtain changing color or the player on the black team leaving the game?
So I have not met one person yet that's like this. They got all of those changes that happened.
Wow, it faded, so that's why it was tricky.
The curtain is changing from red to gold.
Now, the question, of course, is why do I show that video at the start of all of my talks? Well, it's to show you that it's just fascinating the way our brain works. When you focus in on something, that tells your brain it's important. I need to pay attention. I got to put all my energies here. But at the same time, there's a consequence for that. Whatever it's focused on means whatever is not in focus is not even seen at all. So I've had shown that where many people don't even see that gorilla and they swear to me that there wasn't one in the video until we rewind it and show it to them. And they're like, how did I miss that? Right? Because when you're too close to it, you can't see it. So I often find this to be the case. It's the gorilla in the room, as we call it, is that your perspective is focused here, but the real problem is over here. So when it comes to why people say yes or no to the requests we make, what you think may be the reason why they said no to you isn't the actual reason, right? And so what I find is people tend to make their strategies around the excuses people give us after a no happens. Well, once people have made a decision, they will rationalize it 100% of the time to themselves and others. But the point is that may or may not actually be the real reason why they decided. They may not even know the real reasons why they decided. So the gorilla in the room is there may be other things at play. And we know the gorilla is these 7 principles of persuasion are what they're leveraging. Okay. Now let's talk about this. So we know what takes more energy to go take people upstairs and when people go down the stairs. And we know it takes more energy to walk upstairs than it is to walk downstairs. Okay. So do people say no to us because it's too expensive, whatever our product, good, or services may be? Well, on the one hand, you may think so. But let's see. So in an interesting study they did with a group of orthodontists, so this is my field with dentistry, with a product called Invisalign, these kind of clear braces, so to speak. Well, this group of orthodontists came to Dr. Cialdini's consulting group and they said, hey, we're having a problem. This is back in 2003 when Invisalign was fairly new to the scene. And these orthodontists were like, hey, we can't get our patients to buy Invisalign. Now, it wasn't that they were, bad salespeople or didn't, good at their job. Some of these guys were some of the most successful orthodontists in the country. Many of them had their own private plane that they flew, and a couple of them had their own private island down in Turks and Caicos. So, you're pretty good at selling brackets and wires if you got your own island, right? You're doing pretty well. But they were having a hard time selling Invisalign, which was their most expensive price point at $8,000 for top and bottom, treatment. So our consultant went to their orthodontic offices and saw how they were presenting treatment. And it went something like this. Mrs. Jones, you could do short-term therapy with the traditional silver brackets and wires. We could fix the front smile, but not worry about the back teeth for $2,000. We could fix the front and the back, make your smile look nice with the silver brackets and wires for $4,000. We could fix the front and back with clear brackets or white brackets and wires, more cosmetic, if you will, for $6,000, or this clear thing called Invisalign, which most people probably won't even know you're wearing, for $8,000. Which would you prefer? So in that instance, notice we're taking people up the stairs, right? Each number gets higher, 2,000, 4,000, 6,000, 8,000. Well, our trainer made one recommendation based on his knowledge of the principles of persuasion. He said, you know what? Why don't we do this? Why don't you let's flip a coin. Let's do an experiment. So half the time, if it's heads, take people up the stairs, present it the way you've always presented it. But if it's tails, for the other 50%, do us a favor, flip your order, start high and go low. And let's see if it changes the number of people that say yes to your most expensive item, the $8,000 Invisalign. And they asked these docs, they said, well, how much of an increase in sales needs to happen for you to think that you're just really excited that we did this? And they were like, well, we'd be happy with a 5% increase in sales. But if we got a 20% increase in sales of our $8,000 Invisalign, man, that would really do a lot for us this year. So that's often the question I ask, right? How many of you would absolutely love, but like Big Mike, would you like a 20% increase of donations to the fund this year? Would that be important? Would that be a win?
It'd be awesome.
So that's, 20%, right? That's a great win. Well, when they did this, what they noted was when these doctors started with their most expensive item first and went down the stairs from there, so from 8,000 to 6,000 to 4,000 to 2,000, that single move led to a 540% increase in sales of the $8,000 Invisalign. Okay. Automatically showing us that if it was truly about the money, whether people said yes or no, like they either have it or they don't, then the order in which you say it shouldn't matter, right? Well, this showed us that it's not about the money necessarily, because look how many more people said yes just by changing that order, taking them down the stairs versus going up. What's also important to note is that not only did more people say yes, and significantly more to the $8,000 model, those that couldn't afford $8,000 more said yes to the $6,000 group than in the previous one. More said yes to $4,000 than in the up the stairs example, and even more said yes to the $2,000 than in the up the stairs example. So more people left with treatment or something versus choosing to do nothing. And typically when people choose nothing, we all lose in that scenario, right? So our lesson here is not only the grill in the room, most people don't know what's really influencing their decisions. At the same time, what we say to people is important, but what's even more important is the order in which we say it could be making or breaking your request. And automatically taking people up the stairs in your presentation leads to more no's. When you take them down the stairs, it automatically leads to more yeses, right? It's a simple fact. But what else can we do with no? Like, if it's not really about the money, then why do people say no to our requests? Well, from a behavioral science research and research done by one of our very own, Dr. Greg Neidert, what we call his core motives model, we realize that there are some behavioral science reasons behind why people say no, okay? First off is they're not even in the right mindset to hear what you have to say, right? When you come into an interaction with somebody, like you guys are coming into this webinar and watching this today, everybody's coming in with a mindset already established. Whatever you were doing before you got here, that's who you are in this moment now, right? Well, oftentimes, if you are trying to present something to them, if you don't reframe their perspective, if you don't bring them back to here and focus it on what they value about this conversation you're about to have, then oftentimes the mindset they're coming in with is distracting them from what you want to talk about or completely competing with what you want to talk about. And in both of those scenarios, we both lose. The door to yes is shut, okay? So we got to get people in the right mindset. If they're not in the right mindset, we tend to get a no, okay? Oftentimes, there's no relationship, right? I don't know you, I don't like you, therefore I'm not likely to say yes to you. So if you've ever made an appointment in your business with a client or prospective client or just with another individual, okay, and they no-showed on you on the phone or whatever, okay, you ever wonder why that is? Well, it's because there really isn't a relationship there. I mean, think about it. Most of you have someone in your life that I won't say like a relative or a friend of a friend. I won't say you hate this person, but you barely tolerate them when they're around. Let's put it that way. All of us have somebody like that in our life. Well, how many of you would make an appointment to meet that person somewhere or talk to them on the phone and totally no show on them, not call, not tell them you're not coming, nothing, just totally leave them hanging. Well, most of us would not do that. Well, then why do people do that to us? Well, because we're lower than that person on the friend scale and the relationship factor. So if we wanted to change that behavior, now that we know the root cause, we can make a different strategy. The next time that person's in front of me, then I need to do something to build that relationship. Otherwise, the behavior is likely to continue. So not having relationships with people is a big reason why they say no. Another big one is uncertainty. If there's any kind of questions or doubt in people's minds, they don't say yes. Now, sometimes that uncertainty is coming from you directly as the presenter because you're not confident in what you're presenting. I don't know, I guess you could do this, or I guess you could do that, or I guess you could do this. What do you want to do? Well, geez, you're supposed to be the expert and you don't even know what I'm supposed to do. How am I supposed to know? Right? So if you're not confident in what you're presenting, you could be creating this uncertainty in that person's mind. But oftentimes what I find is this uncertainty comes from providing too many choices and options to that person. Number one, they need a choice. If they don't have a choice, they're not really committed one way or the other. But at the same time, there's this paradox of choice that says the more choices people have in front of them, the more options they have to choose from. This paradox is the less likely they are to choose any of them because they lose the ability to tell the differences between the options. And if they can't tell the difference, they're not sure, it's safer for them to say no or not to move than to make a decision. So presenting options is important, but if you don't get them committed to one of those options, if you leave too many options on the table, they're not likely to move forward and say yes. Okay. So we got to have a strategy to overcome this uncertainty aspect of it. And the fourth big reason from a behavioral science standpoint, why people say no to you is, I call this the I got time phenomenon, the I got time mindset. There's no urgency. I got time. I'll get to it. Yeah, I need to do that fun, but you know what? I can do that next year. Wait, I don't have to do it by the end of the year, do I? Oh, wait, I do, because some big things happen if I don't do it by the end of this year, right? So there's this uncertainty or this lack of urgency that's present, okay? So we need to motivate action instead. And while people intend to do these things down the road, kind of goes on their to-do list, by the time everything else in their life starts stacking up and gets in front of that and distracts them from what they intended to do, it's never to be seen or heard from again, okay? So how can we leverage these principles of persuasion to get them in the right mindset, build the relationships with them, decrease uncertainty, and motivate action? Well, we can tap into these 7 areas, okay? The principle of reciprocity. If I give someone a gift of value, of significance, an obligation is created inside of them that they feel the need to give back in kind. So we tend to give back to those who have given to us. So if I do you a favor, you're more likely to do me a favor as a result. Liking principle, okay? We like to do business with people we like, okay? So commonality is important. Unity, okay? Unity is a principle of togetherness. So instead of, it's not a you versus me situation, it's a we situation. We are united under this name, this category, this ideal, if you will. We got social proof. We look to the evidence what others are doing, oftentimes to show us what we should be doing. The principle of authority is important, right? Authority means we look to credible, trustworthy experts to tell us what we should do. Why? Because truthfully, we don't have time to be an expert in everything. So if a plumber comes to my house and tells me I need a new toilet, well, guess what, guys? I don't know anything about plumbing, okay? You need somebody to fix your teeth, I'm your guy. But to fix a toilet, I don't know anything about that, right? So if that's what they're recommending, I need a new toilet, okay, I guess I'm buying a new toilet, right? So we look to these people to tell us what we should do. Consistency is a big one. Consistency, think of this as the commitment principle. If people commit, they tend to do. So if they're not doing in your world, what's missing? You're probably not getting a commitment. Not really. Get the commitment, watch the change in people's behavior and what they do. Scarcity, a lot of you may have known this principle. Scarcity is truly about resources. And if resources are dwindling or about to run out, it motivates you to want that thing more and do more to get it. For example, if you're watching this right now or listening to this after the fact, excuse me, if I told you that the oxygen was running out of the room you're sitting in right now, right? How many of you would prefer to know before it runs out versus when it runs out, right? If I tell that to Deanna right now, she's already running out the door. Most of you would want to know before it runs out, because if you know before, it's going to motivate you to get up and get out of here and go do something about it, right? That's what true scarcity taps into. This fear of life or death resources are dwindling or disappearing. So it motivates us to want to do more to get it. Now, what hasn't developed because of our lizard brain over time is understanding true life or death resources running out versus toilet paper at the grocery store because there's a storm coming, or milk and bread, right? Our brain looks at those two things exactly the same way. And this pull of scarcity and this motivation to get it, if it's about to disappear, is the same driver for both, which is kind of cool, right? So we can leverage these principles to satisfy this no. And who do we have to thank? Of course, was Dr. Robert Cialdini, professor of emeritus of psychology and marketing at Arizona State University. His book, with over 5 million copies sold, Influence, has been rated the #1 business book by the top CEOs and entrepreneurs in the US, an award he was given in 2021, 2022, and 2023. Now, these top CEOs and entrepreneurs were surveyed and recommended, they weren't prompted. They were just organically said, hey, we recommend these books. And when they surveyed them, the #1 book that came up above them all was Dr. Cialdini's book.
I think I called it Persuasion earlier, but Influence is the name of the one that I got on Amazon, or not Amazon, Audible. That's what I listened to it on. And they have several versions. There's an updated version of it, which has a lot of examples and stories. It's a really good detailed book. But I also highly recommend signing up for the email list, because even today I got a great email about a story with Charlie Munger, actually. I don't know. But anyway, I didn't know that story, that they felt that it was so valuable. They gave Dr. Cialdini a share of stock for Berkshire Hathaway, which has grown exponentially in value, but they thought his book influenced them so much in a positive way. It gave them so much value. It was the law of reciprocity, and they gave back to him. So that was a cool story. Just saying, sign up for the newsletter if you haven't already.
Definitely. Yeah, Charlie and Warren Buffett both attribute a lot of their success to what they read about in that book, Influence, right? And that was just the start of that knowledge. There's so much more to it than what he was able to even offer in the book. So think of these things as like when they're organically in our environment, right? When we're exposed to them, it subconsciously triggers a yes. So it bypasses rational thought and reason. But it's not a guarantee of a yes. This is why I call it sets the stage for a yes, right? Sometimes experience trumps these things, meaning if I have touched a red hot stove before and burned myself, the next time I come across a red hot stovetop, I don't care what principles you put in front of me. I know through experience it hurts. I'm not going to touch it, right? So there's certain times where these things don't play out, but the majority of the time, we're actually making the majority of our decisions subconsciously. When these things are present, it bypasses that rational thought altogether, and it triggers a yes. Usually because we've learned through time, we can trust these 7 things. If they're present and I say yes, historically, we've shown that that's usually a good thing for us. It's in our best interest to follow these things. And the cool thing, what we teach about at the Institute, is that you can leverage these things in an ethical way, because people have tried to use things unethically against us forever. So one of the main reasons Cialdini wrote the book to start with was to educate the public what these things are. So when you see these things, you can make a more ethical decision for yourself to decide, does this make sense for me? So the cool thing is we can be ethical in leveraging these principles when they're present to satisfy the mindset, to build relationships with people, to decrease uncertainty, and to increase urgency. So let's dig into a few points on how we do that. So let's start out with the mindset, okay? Mindset is who you are in the moment you're about to make that decision. But who you are in that moment is about where you are in that moment you're about to make a decision. Where you are emotionally in that moment, right? Where you are cognitively. What are your thoughts? If your thoughts are always negative, 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 the mindset that creates is going to affect your behavior and the decisions you make externally. So, and the environment that you're in, the sights, the sounds, the smells around you. Okay. So there's certain things we can do to trigger different mindsets, and images create mindsets. Asking specific types of questions can create a mindset, so to speak. So in a random grocery store on a Tuesday at 10 a.m., they surveyed folks and asked them, hey, we're with a soft drink company. We'd love for you to try this new soda that we're offering. Will you help us out and share all of your personal information with us, your home address, email, phone number, etc.? We'll send you a free case of the soda, and all we ask is for market feedback and market research. And in essence, as you can imagine, the majority were like, no, I'm not doing that. No, thanks. I don't need your soda. So they were wondering, what could we do to change this? What if we had a different mindset, right? What if we had a person, what was the mindset of the person who would say yes to trying something new and different? Oh yeah, that would be an adventurous person. So what they did in the next group of people in the second part of the experiment is they would survey them before they walked into the store and say, hey, sorry to bother you, real quick survey question for our customers. Do you consider yourself to be an adventurous person or not? Yes or no? So just by asking that one question, are you adventurous? What's interesting is 100% said, yes, they are adventurous. Then about 10 to 15 minutes later, a different set of researchers went to those folks and asked them the same request as the first group, right? Hey, we've got this soda. We'd love for you to try it. Just give me your personal information. We'll send you a case of it, and you let us know what you think. Well, we know that in the first group, when they just asked for them their personal information, the majority said no, right? Only 17% said yes. How many in the second group said yes when they had the mindset of being adventurous? 84%. Okay. So a significant change in the behavior just by asking a single question. So I've noticed this, and I do this with my own dental patients. And I recommend this for other businesses as well. When you're coming into a situation with a person, get them to answer this question persuasively, meaning before they get to you in person, one simple question: which do you prefer? From an investment standpoint, let's say, do you prefer to be somebody who's reactive, who'll wait for the wheels to fall off the bus and then make a move? Or do you prefer to be proactive, someone who wants to avoid pain, complications, loss of money down the road? Which would you prefer, reactive or proactive? Okay. And automatically, by framing it that way, more people are going to choose because they prefer to be proactive. And now you've actually got somebody who's more willing to make a decision, more likely to say yes to your request. So there's certain questions we can ask persuasively to create a right mindset, just like they did in the adventurous study. So it all starts with understanding the mindset you want them to be in, like who says yes to this request, and then asking a question that puts them into that mindset is the key. Okay. Now, to build a relationship, we can leverage reciprocity, liking, and unity. Now, reciprocity is activated by being the first to give a gift or the first to give a concession. Now, a concession is like a backup plan, an alternative option, a plan B, if you will. So when my oldest son, Riley, had his 3rd birthday, we had about 20 of his little friends from preschool come to this party. And my wife had wrapped 20 little individually wrapped presents for each of the kids coming to the party. And I remember thinking at the time, like, so honey, what are these presents for? I thought they were bringing our kid a present. It's his birthday. And she goes, no, that's for the kids come to the party. And I was like, well, why are we doing that? She goes, I don't know. That's what you do. And any of you that are parents know this, right? You give gifts to those that come to your kid's party. Well, in essence, it's the law of reciprocity in action. They're giving us a gift. Therefore, this obligation is created that we need to give back. So if I give them a gift back in the moment, obligation satisfied, we're done. That's actually why we do it, right? Well, a concession works the same way. If somebody says no to my request, and I'm the first to offer them a concession or a backup option, an ethical fallback position, then they're more likely to say yes to the next request, okay? So in an interesting study with market researchers, they asked people if they would have time to do a 15-minute survey about their healthcare, okay? And I don't know about you, but I don't like doing surveys. In fact, most people hate doing surveys. So researchers love to ask people questions they know the majority are going to say no to, change one thing, and then see if we get a significant change in the number of yeses. So when they asked these folks if they would fill out this 15-minute survey about their healthcare, only about 25% of them said, sure, I'll do your 15-minute survey. But now here's the goal. We want to do a 15-minute survey. So what they did was they said, we need to reframe this. So what if we anchor them to something else higher? So in a second group of people, they asked them something different first. They said, hey, would you mind helping us by doing the 60-minute survey? And of course, people are like, oh my God, no, I don't have time for that. Okay, totally understand. Well, since you can't do the 60-minute survey, would you mind doing this 15-minute survey instead? How many in that group said yes? 44%. So a significant change. Now, if those people, the 56% who said no, if they would have had a 5-minute survey they could have asked them to do, it would have been probably 88% would have said yes to that. So there's this interesting moment of opportunity that happens after someone says no to your request, that if you immediately ask for something else in that moment, that alternative compromise, the plan B, your concession, you're more likely to get a yes. If they say no to that and you offer another fallback position, you're even more likely to get a yes to that, which is kind of crazy, right? So in essence, come into a situation prepared that not to be afraid of no, but be ready for no. If I hear a no, what am I asking for next? What's my fallback to? If I get a no to that, what's the fallback next? Okay. Because studies show that people actually hate to say no to you, and they hate to say no to you multiple times in the same moment, which is kind of unique. Okay. So that's reciprocity. Liking. We like to do business with people that we like or who are like us, who have similarities, commonalities with us as well. So in an interesting study of students in Stanford versus Northwestern, the kids at each college were asked to email each other and debate a certain side of a specific topic, right? And they were told that you have to debate back and forth. And at the end, you as students have to come to a consensus on who won the debate and who lost the debate. And if you both agree that so-and-so won the debate, that person got an A for the project. If you lost the debate, you got a C for the project. But if neither one of you can come to an agreement on who won or lost, you both fail the project. And they weighted this thing so heavily as part of this experiment, like a really high negative incentive, to where if you failed this project, it accounted for something like 40% of your grade for the semester in this class. So it was really in your best interest to figure it out. You're getting an A or a C, right? But nobody wants to fail. What happened when they just went back and forth? So they just started emailing each other their side of the debate. It's like Republican versus Democrat, go. Why should you be one or the other? Here they go back and forth, right? Well, when they had no interaction except just talking about the topic at hand and debating their side of it, 30% of the time, neither kid could agree and they both failed. It's kind of crazy. Now watch the change when they did something different. In a different group of kids and students, they said, you know what, before you start debating this, why don't you find one thing in common with each other first? One commonality, one similarity. Oh, you like bicycles? I love bicycles, right? You play tennis, I play tennis, whatever. Find one connection first, then get into your debate. And that's what they did. When they find one connection, one commonality between them, then debated their sides, only 6% of the time could they not come to an agreement. So the advice here and the tip is that before you get to the business of hand, whatever you're going to talk to that person about, you better find at least one thing in common with them. At least one. The more, the better, but at least one thing. The birthday buddy is this. A lady comes into my practice, and on the surface, I didn't think we had anything in common. But when I looked at her birth date, her and I have the exact same birth date, October 14th, 1976. And so I started my conversation and brought that to the surface. And I said, hey, that's your birthday? That's my birthday. We're birthday buddies. And we spent the next 20 minutes talking about our birthdays, because that was the year we were turning 40. To the tune where she made me call my mom and find out what time of the morning I was born so she could see who was older, because I didn't know what time I was born. But you know what? Guess who left my practice that day, signed up for her $12,000 treatment plan? My birthday buddy. Now, is that the only reason why she signed up? No, I'm sure there were other factors. But do you see how it sets the stage, right? It's another thing that makes it not about the money or something else, okay? The more of these things we stack up, the more likely we are to get a yes. And if you don't have the time to find the commonality and connections, motivate your team, educate your team to find those connections for you. So like my team knows everything I feel comfortable sharing about myself to my patients, and they would go out and search that for me and bring it to me. They'd say, hey, Phelps, we got a new patient in room 3. She's got 2 kids like you do, and she loves to play tennis. Great. Now I can start the conversation with that. I don't have to go looking for it. So it's a nice little shortcut. But once the connection's made, now we can move on to why they're here, right? So I think liking is probably the most bungled principle of them all. And it's costing organizations and industries billions of dollars because nobody has time to find the connection anymore. Find the connection. That's how you build relationships, right? Just like the reciprocity aspect of it as well. Unity is similar to liking and reciprocity, but kind of different. So in a McDonald's in South America, they did an experiment where beforehand, kids were coming into the McDonald's with their parents. And as they were leaving the restaurant, there'd be like a little concierge person at the restaurant would hand the kid a balloon on the way out. Well, obviously our team, when they came to the Cialdini group to consult, realized that there was a misbungled opportunity. And this was with our friends in the UK that were working for, we call this influence at work. And they noticed, they made one recommendation. They said, why don't we invoke reciprocity here? Instead of giving the kid a balloon after they're leaving the restaurant, why don't we give the kid the balloon as they're entering the restaurant as a gift from us, and see if that has any change in the sales of items of food or things related to food around that. And what do you think happened when the kids were given a balloon as they were entering the store versus when they were leaving? One small change, same balloon, right? Just change the sequence, the order in which things happened. Well, that one act led to a 25% increase in food purchases related to this, what we call it family business, right? So more Happy Meals, more of those kinds of things. And it also led to a 20% increase in associated sales, meaning food and stuff for the parents. So the parents bought more for the kids and they bought more for themselves as a result. The challenge here is that this was not a true case of reciprocity. Reciprocity is if I give you a gift of value, you feel the obligation to give back and do. In this case, the kid was given the gift, but who felt obligated to give back? The parents, right? That's when Cialdini discovered that there was a 7th principle, which we call unity. So many of us feel united under certain categories of things we relate to: culture, family, geography, where you live, religion, favorite sports teams, right? Things that you can unite yourself under and associate with. So it's not a you versus me situation. It's a we. We are this, right? We are tempo, right? We are that, okay? We associate ourselves with something. So one of the things you can do to invoke this unity principle when you're interacting with somebody is to get them on your team, get them on your side, to put themselves in the mindset of being of you, not apart from you. So don't ask for a person's help necessarily, because now you're invoking reciprocity. And if they help you with this topic or situation you're in, then you're obligated to help them back, okay? Don't ask for people's opinions, because when you ask for somebody's opinion, you're asking for them to criticize you and what you're bringing to the table, okay? Your product, your good, your service. Instead, leverage this idea of we, right? Ask them for their advice. When you ask people for their advice, it makes them put themselves in your mindset. They are united under you now and what you're bringing to the table. And they're thinking as if they're on your team. Well, if they're thinking as if they're on your team, they're your partner in this. If they're your partner, if you ask them to be a part of this, it's going to be hard for people to say no as a result. So if you want a better outcome out of your clients or whatnot, ask for their advice and how do we deal with the situation? Or can I get your advice on how I can get you into this investment fund or what it might take? Automatically, you're more likely to get a better answer and thus a better response at the end. So reciprocity, liking, and unity can help us build relationships. Now, how do we decrease uncertainty? Well, we can leverage social proof and we can leverage authority. So social proof, as I said, is the evidence of the masses, that oftentimes we look to the evidence of what others are doing to tell us or show us what we should do. It's the reason why in nature, birds flock together, animals herd, fish school together, right? What happens to a fish if it's out there in the ocean swimming by himself? Anybody seen Finding Nemo? Bad things tend to happen, right? Usually they get eaten. That's why we've learned that there's safety in the crowd, there's safety in the group. And so while we all want to be unique individuals that are different from everybody else, we still want to be unique individuals that are part of a crowd, part of a group, part of a community in some way, shape, or form. So in the business world, so to speak, to leverage this idea of social proof, the evidence of what the masses are doing, if one of your products, goods, or services is your most popular one, the thing that the majority of your previous people have said yes to, then you would do wise to share that with those moving forward. So in a similar study done by Steve Martin and his crew at Influence at Work UK, in these McDonald's in South America, at different restaurants, they would put a most popular sticker on 3 different types of McFlurries. So one restaurant would have the most popular sticker on the chocolate McFlurry, a different set of restaurants would be on the strawberry, and a different set of ones would be on the caramel one. And they measured, did that most popular sticker have any impact on the sales of those specific McFlurries? Well, not shockingly, by sharing evidence of what the majority of others or many others have done, that led to a 48% increase in sales of that specific McFlurry in each of those restaurants. Let's say that it's the chocolate McFlurry, but you don't like chocolate, you like strawberry. Well, it also led to a 52% increase in overall sales of other dessert items as well. Okay, other dessert items as well. So meaning the other McFlurries. So either way, more people chose something over choosing to do nothing when they knew one was the most popular. Okay, so to speak. So social proof is the evidence of the masses. So if you have evidence that the majority have done or said yes to a specific thing, just share that honestly with others, and more will say yes to that thing as well. Authority means we look to the we rely on those with superior knowledge and wisdom to guide us and tell us what we should do. But it's not about being the authority or telling people you're the authority. It's about letting other things, other items, other people present you as an authority. And what we mean by that is we want other things to present your expertise to them as an authority. So authority is expertise and it's trust. So expertise is your years in business, any awards you've received, those kind of things. Okay. There's authority triggers. So like normally I've got the Cialdini Institute on my backdrop on a virtual meeting, or I can take that off and I've got different influence triggers around me, like the influence book. You normally see that behind me. I wrote a textbook on healthcare marketing. I got liking with my son in a dental code. I got my authority, my expertise, credentials on the walls. Okay. Putting these things, the authority triggers in the background can be huge. I do this in the dental setting as well. So this is a view from my dental chair, and you've got all our degrees, credentials, awards I've received and whatnot there. Okay. So letting these things present you as the expert instead of telling people you're the expert as well are going to be key. So if you have credentials in these things, then you need to share that with others. Okay. How about consistency? Well, as I said, consistency is when you make a commitment, there's a lot of external and internal influence on you to stay consistent and follow through with that commitment that you made. Okay. In essence, people tend to commit to what they do, but there's certain types of commitments we need to get. Active commitments. There's 3 types of active commitments. There's a verbal commitment. Will you call me if you can't make this appointment? Yes. Okay, great. Thank you. In one study alone, asking that one verbal commitment decreased no-show rates in a popular restaurant in Chicago from a 30% no-show rate down to 10. Just by getting one commitment question. Will you please call me? Yes. Okay, great. So it's verbal. It's written commitments. We tend to live up to what we write down. So written is a type of active commitment. We've got effort is another one, is the highest active commitment you can do. If you put money into it, right? Or you put time, any kind of effort, and that's the highest active commitment, that person is highly likely to do what they said they were going to do. We've got public commitments. Okay. If everybody knows you said you were going to do something, well, there's a lot of influence on you to follow through and do what you said you were going to do. Okay. And most importantly, we have voluntary commitments. People need to feel like they have a choice. If they don't feel like they have a choice in the matter, if they feel like they're being told or dictated to, then you in essence have taken away their control. And that, from their perspective, is not influencing them. Now you're into the realm of coercion, intimidation, right? Forcing them to do it when you tell them and they don't feel like they have a choice. Just by backing that off and presenting a this or that choice, automatically more people are going to be more likely to say yes. Let me give an example. So if you're one of my patients in my chair and I say, Mrs. Jones or Mr. Jones, you need a crown for your tooth. I just took away your control. You're going to think, who are you to tell me I need a crown? It doesn't hurt right now. I'll decide when I need this crown. I'll take that back. Thank you very much. That control. right? And even though you may placate me and say, yeah, it makes sense, doc, sure. When it comes time to schedule for that crown, what do we hear? Well, let me check my schedule. Let me talk to my spouse or my significant other. Let me do anything but say yes to you right now. In essence, that's what that means. Versus if I presented it this way instead. Well, you've got some options here. Number one is do nothing, but here's what's going to happen. Decay doesn't go away. You're probably going to need a root canal built up in the crown because the infection and the pain is going to come. And that's going to cost you $3,600. Or we could avoid all of that and do a crown for significantly less today. Which would you prefer? So when you present things as this or that, now you're giving them a voluntary choice. You're automatically going to get more compliance and more people are going to say yes to your request. The key with the voluntary choice and the this or that framework is whatever you would like them to say yes to should be that, should be the second thing. This wakes the brain up and tells it the next thing that's coming is important. I should pay attention to it. So it puts more emphasis on that. Does that make sense? So this or that, okay? Automatically, they're more committed because of the voluntary choice they're going to make. Last but not least, of course, we got scarcity. Scarcity is about loss. So an interesting study out in California, they knocked on homeowners' doors and they said, hey, we're with an insulation company. We estimate that based on the square footage of your home, that you would save up to $200 a month in your utility bills by insulating your home with our materials. We have a certain amount of insulation at X price. We get it to you today. Would you like to buy this insulation? So that was their standard sales pitch. You could save on your utilities by using our materials. Because haven't we been conditioned as a society that we like to save, right? Well, in the opposite group, they decided to use something we call loss framing, because that's what scarcity is all about. Do we care more about the benefits of a certain feature or what we stand to lose by not tapping into that feature? What's the loss framing aspect? Well, if you could save $200 a month, honestly and realistically, ethically, then what's happening if you're not doing that? You're missing out on $200 a month. So that's basically what they said in the loss framing group. We estimate that based on the square footage of your home, that if you fail to insulate your home with our material, you could be losing or missing out on $200 a month in your utility bills. Would you like to buy our insulation? Right? Which of those two was more influential to get people to say yes? Well, because of scarcity, we know this loss framing, 150% more people said yes to buying the insulation. So this doesn't mean that the benefits are important of your feature, but what's more important is starting with the consequences if they say no, right? Or what are they missing out on? That loss framing by not moving forward. So like Deanna mentioned earlier, that there was a time is here where there's some conversions needed for IRAs or other things. Well, what happens if they don't do that, right? What are they going to be missing out on as a result, right? Think about that in your scenarios there. What do you stand to lose by not taking advantage of this thing? Presenting that to somebody first automatically is going to move more people towards your direction. And you've kind of heard me say this a little bit already. Like when I present treatment options to my patients, I always start out with the scarcity of what they stand to lose by doing nothing. That's always their choice. Do nothing, but here's what it's going to cost you. In the additional treatment you're going to need, here's what it's going to cost you and what you value. Meaning if you don't want to be in pain, guess what you're going to be in? Pain, right? If you don't want to take off time of work, guess what you're going to have to do if this happens? Take off time from work, right? So what do you value? And there's going to be a financial cost to that as well. So I call this my scarcity anchor. So whenever I present options to people, I always anchor them to the ethical consequences of doing nothing. What's it really going to cost them? Okay. Or you can choose to not do that and do this today. It's up to you. So leveraging this idea of a voluntary commitment to do so, okay, is key. So we can use this idea of persuasion, getting people in the right mindset, asking questions before they get to us that puts them in the right mindset, that keeps the door to yes open, and they're more receptive to what we want to say. I've talked a little bit about contrast. I don't have time to go into that today. We talk about reciprocity, liking, unity, social proof, authority, consistency, and scarcity. This is my contact information. If you guys want to scan that, we've got a great introductory video that is about 2.5 hours of content just to give you even more detail than what I had time to do today. My email, chris@cialdini.com. If we can be of assistance working with you directly on your personal development, with your company and your education and applying these principles, that's what we do. And that's what we're here to help. And those, I will say that we've yet to work with a company or an individual that has not seen significant results when you work with us. And the reason is, Cialdini's Principles, if you think about it, he wrote that book, Influence, 40 years ago. 40 years ago. And they've never been more relevant and important than they are today. Because the more distracted we get with our outside world, the more complex our life gets, the more shortcuts we need to decide, and the more we lean on these things to make our decisions, okay? So in any economy, any situation, it doesn't matter. So in my dental practices, I went back after training with Cialdini for over a year, and I took 2 of my struggling practices, and I spent over 3 years implementing these principles and creating new systems, influence-based systems in my dental practices, and trying to solve my pain points and challenges of my struggling practices. And each of those two practices grew $1 million each 3 years in a row. Okay. Now in my industry, you may not know about dentistry, but that's almost unheard of. Okay. That's not easy to do. What's even more impressive, I think you might say, is because guess when I did that? 2008 to 2010. Right after the housing crisis, right? Back then, when more dentists went bankrupt in that 3-year period than in the 50-year history in dentistry. Okay. Prior to that. Why was I able to grow in a not opportune market, so to speak? Because I was making my strategies on what people are actually using to make their decisions. That's what's cool about this. All of this external stuff you think are affecting people's decisions, it's not really the root cause. Build your strategies around the root cause and get excited about the different outcome. So I appreciate you guys hanging in there with me. If there is any questions, we've got a few minutes. I'm happy to take them.
Chris, this was awesome. I just have to say that every time I watch or listen to you, I'm just as impressed. These principles are so fundamental. It's just human nature what they appeal to. And every time you speak, it reminds me movie The Matrix when Neo is talking to the Oracle.
Yeah.
And he's given a choice, but he always makes the right choice, and he's just there to find out why. It's that decision that you put in the individual mind that they are in control, but you're persuading ethically for them to take action that basically you want them to take, and it makes a lot of sense. It's very, very powerful, very simple. So how do folks engage you from the point of view that all this stuff is so wonderful, but they need to build into their day in and day out business operation? I was talking to a gentleman, we leave the name confidential, but he used your services. You came out to his office or offices and you helped him or his team to implement this. Is this the most common, easiest way where folks engage you for some consulting for a few days to come out and to help them implement? It's very applicable to anything folks are selling, whether it's dental, medical, anything else. The way they're selling it, it makes a difference. Like just an example you gave him, if it's based on pain versus pleasure, people are much more responsive to pain when they're dealing with the pain decision. They're still making the decision, but they're solving a pain versus, well, I'll save a little bit of money versus I just have so much pain, I'm spending so much more. How do I remove that? And that is, it's a negative versus positive emotion. And from what I understand, and this is just reaffirms this, people respond 7 times more likely to a negative emotion versus to a positive. Positive is like a saving mechanism. All right, I'll just procrastinate. Versus a pain or negative emotion, they got to deal with it because it's causing them grief, right?
Yeah. And you're right. And to put these things into your culture, it's like, number one, you got to learn the concepts and then have help and try to figure out how to apply them to your specific unique challenges and situations. So there's a spectrum, right? So we call this you can start out by just doing it yourself. And so that's where our online videos come into play, right? You can go to the Cialdini Institute, you can purchase access to over 10 hours of the content, learn it from Cialdini directly, and you can figure it out yourself, right? You can do that now. Or the upper end of the spectrum is you can bring somebody, a trainer like myself in and work with you and your team and not only learn the concepts, learn some influence systems, and then figure out how to apply them to your specific challenges. Almost like in that scenario, I'm not just giving you fish, I'm teaching you how to fish, right? And if I teach you how to fish and use these things, then you don't need me like that, right? Except for every now and then for clarification moving forward. You can now be self-sustaining and use these things and leverage them however you see fit in marketing, in sales, in people development, right? In their HR actions and whatnot. So again, it's how committed are you? Because each of those, even budget-wise, is a spectrum. Obviously, it's a lot more expensive to bring me in than it is to just watch videos, right? So it's where you're at in your knowledge base. Do you want to start somewhere, or are you ready to go all in and get the best return for your investment? I mean, I think, and somewhere in between, we've got options for everybody. So that's why I say, email me, let's do a call, let's find out your specific situation, and then we'll figure out what product or service we have that best fits what your needs are.
I do have some questions that were pre-submitted because there was a lot of people who were interested in hearing more. Are there any new principles that Dr. Cialdini is actually studying right now, or is this an ongoing study?
Good question. Well, the newest principle, of course, is unity. He came out with that and discovered it a few years back. So that's the 7th principle. Historically, there's always been 6. And that came out because of that, the work that was done in those McDonald's with the reciprocity. We thought it was reciprocity, but then we realized, no, there's something else going on. The kid didn't reciprocate, the parents did. So he's always actually looking for examples of are there other principles out there? One of the things I showed in the slide I talked about at the last slide that I didn't get to cover today is called contrast. Well, contrast is a phenomenon that was discovered by other people years after Cialdini's book originally came out. But, what Cialdini said, in essence, how he did this research was to discover these things. He pretended to be a potential employee at all these different kinds of sales trainings in different industries. And he was just studying back then, what are the best of the best using to influence us to say yes? He was looking for patterns, right? Was there something they were all tapping into, whether they realized it or not? And that's what we now know as the 6 principles. But contrast was always there, but these people weren't tapping into it. Researchers years later did, but knowing what we know now about contrast, he told me that would probably be, had he discovered it, would have been the 8th principle of persuasion. It's that powerful. It's that important. It's at fundamentally on these scales of yes, no, what makes the decision? That's contrast, right? So it's powerful to get people to say yes or no. So yeah, there's definitely more out there, and he's all actively looking. I'd say his focus right now is on what we call post-suasion. He wrote a book on persuasion. What do you do before the person gets to you to create a mindset? We've got the persuasion principles, or what do we leverage in the moment with that person? But what do we do post-suasion wise? What do we do after the fact when they've left us? Is there a way to influence them back to the table? The answer is yes, but that's what he's actively working on now. And I'm hoping he'll be able to write another book on that topic, which will be a great bookend: persuasion, persuasion, post-suasion.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm really interested. It took me so long to get through that one because it's expanded version is just so detailed. That was one of the longest books on Audible, and I had, Audible credits. So that's why I was like, I'm getting the most for my money out of this. But anyway, okay. So going on to other questions and that mindset that you're talking about, what are some ways to prime an audience before making a request or delivering the message? Like, are there any quick persuasion tips that you could give? Or like, I know we're in, I guess, a digital age now. And so how can you most influence someone in this digital age before you get to actually talk to them? Or is there even a tactic that would get them, to go forward without you?
Yeah, definitely. Well, no, if you're meeting them for the first time, a simple persuasive thing you can do is make sure you get your credentials, your bio, anything you want to brag about yourself, let's say, about your expertise and knowledge and wisdom, testimonials people have given about you. Ideally, that should get to them before they get you in person.
Okay.
Automatically, they read about your expertise. As I like to say this, people want to meet you before they meet you. So if they get to do that in written, picture, video format, right? Now they're more likely to come to the situation looking at you as the expert and taking your advice more to heart.
That's a good one. So are there any specific, I guess, laws that are best effective other than the bio and testimonials for the digital audience?
Yeah. So liking, let's say on your website right now, studies are now showing that if one of the first things people see on your website is a welcome message from you, the owner or the principal, that person is automatically, when they feel welcomed, they feel liked, and they're automatically more likely to stay and look at the rest of the website and dig deeper into the different pages and things that you have listed there. So, if you're ever curious about what it should look like, go to the Cialdini Institute website and just do what we're doing, right? There's a welcome message from Dr. Cialdini is one of the first things you see there. You see at the very top is social proof. We've got a 5-star rating bar that shows we've got like a 4.7 out of 5 overall rating with over 29,000 people that have reviewed our products and services, right? People need to see evidence of that social proof. Wow, that many people have said something nice about them. Okay. And you see that early on in the website, right? That's something you can do. When you're communicating with people, even if it's an automated program, make sure it's using their first name or their nickname, not Mr. Smith or John Smith, right? Using their first name or nickname automatically sounds more personal, even though it's an automation that's doing it, right? Sending that out. So there are definitely ways that even in this digital age, that you can humanize the content that's out there. On your emails, how many of you have standard just text email? Like your signature line, so to speak, is just the text is written out, right? Versus having a nice cursive signature line, your digital signature. Which do you think of those two would be more influential?
Well, I mean, I guess, is it a personal email or is it a marketing email? Does that matter?
Who is it from, right? If it's from a company, that's one thing. But if it's from an individual, to add that little liking effect and make it more personal, to let them know that there is a person behind this somewhere, if that's your goal, then to personalize it, it should be a digital signature.
Yeah, well, got to be careful with that these days with all the fraud that's going on too.
You go with your left hand.
That's not my real signature. Testing. That's how I know.
Okay.
Okay, so words to avoid. What are some of the words we should avoid? Is one of the questions that someone pre-submitted.
I mean, I wouldn't say there's so much words you want to avoid is be careful the questions that you're asking. Because as I said, questions create commitments. Questions can create mindsets. Are the questions you're asking creating the right mindset or not? Is it walking them down the path to yes, or is it walking them down a path to no? For instance, if you have my patient and I say, all right, Daniel, let me ask you this. Does your tooth hurt right now? No. Is it keeping you up at night? No. Is it sensitive to cold? No. Is it sensitive to sweets? No. Does it hurt when you chew? No. If you say no to every one of those questions, what are you now thinking in your mind as a patient, right? You're thinking, oh, I'm passing all the tests. I'm good. But the reason I'm asking you this is because I'm looking at your x-ray and I see a big old infection on your tooth that has just killed the nerve. And I'm just trying to decide, do you know, is it dead or not? Right. And your answer just told me it's dead, but you don't know this. But in your mind, you don't have a problem. I passed all my tests. So if I come to you now and I don't explain that well and I say, well, here's your situation. You're like, what situation? I don't have a problem. I passed all your tests. Now you think I'm trying to sell you something, right? Versus if I said this simple, added one simple word. Hey, Deanna, does your tooth keeping you up at night yet? Is it cold sensitive yet? Does it hurt to chew yet? All right, well, what does yet imply?
It's coming.
Crap. Even though I'm okay today, what's coming? It's still it's still an opportunity to come, right? So I won't say there's certain words to avoid. You want to avoid certain questions for sure, but there are certain words you want to add, like yet sometimes.
That's really good to know. Is there a fine line between persuasion and manipulation?
Oh, it is a very fine line, and it's very distinct. Okay, and it comes back to choice. Persuasion and influence is all about giving the person choice and presenting choices to them. They are in control. Coercion, intimidation, manipulation, force, somebody telling you to do something is the other extreme. You don't really feel like you have a choice, at least not a good one. Therefore, you're not in control. Okay, that's the line, right? So if we're giving them choices, if they're really in control, they can really decide, good or bad, it's still up to them. Then we're on the influence and persuasion side. Now, sure, we're guiding the choices, right? We're guiding them down the path, but we're doing so in an ethical way. But if we're not giving them choices, right, we're taking that away, then if they feel backed into a corner, then yeah, then we're on the other side, which we don't want to be.
My last question, I don't know if it's scientifically proven or an opinion. What are the two you could combine to get the best outcome out of the 7 laws?
Well, it depends on what you're trying to do in that moment, right? So if I want to motivate action today, if I want a yes today, then I'm going to leverage scarcity and consistency. If I get a commitment out of them and they know what they stand to lose by not moving today, then automatically I'm more likely to get a yes to start today, right? If I know that I need to decrease their uncertainty, maybe I've talked to them, but they haven't moved yet. Well, probably maybe uncertainties at play there. Maybe I gave them too many options. Then I got to leverage social proof. What have others done? Well, here's what the majority of my clients, I know you're on the fence, but here's what the majority of my other clients have done or said yes to. And here's how it worked out for them. Here's what all the experts are saying. And me as your expert are saying you need to do, right? I may leverage those to decrease uncertainty. If I'm trying to build a relationship, then I'm going to use reciprocity and liking, right? So for me, it just depends on which of those reasons why people say no is the most important for me in this moment. That dictates what principles I tap into. Well, and the other thing is, not every principle is present in every situation. Sometimes you can only work with the principle that's there. I mean, there'll always be at least one present, but sometimes that's part of the challenge is you got to be the detective and figure out, wait, in this situation, which one is here? Which one could I tap into and bring to the surface? Because remember, to be ethical in these things, we're not imparting them into a situation. We're not planting them into a situation. They're already there. You just haven't been trained to recognize that they're present, and you haven't been trained on what to do about it, right? Change that and just decide, well, of the principles I have available to me, which ones can I tap into to reach this ultimate end goal?
Yeah, I know it's a lot. I mean, I've listened to the book. I've read the things and tried to study, some, but in practice, it's really difficult unless you've had a lot of practice, right? And so I think the training that you guys offer is really valuable. Are there any other questions, Mike?
No, I just have a commentary, exactly, just listening and observing. All this requires repetition. So it's observation, of course, like you said, what principles are present, and 2, how to respond, and it requires repetition. The question just yet, it's experience, it's skill. You're asking the same question with just a slight modification, and that can make a gigantic difference. And to be able to do that, it requires certain training and skill sets to modify your current approach. Most of us operate in our most, let's just call it, common mode of operation, the way we have learned to speak, the way we've learned to ask questions. And these basic techniques need to be ingrained and behavior has to be modified. So even observation of a principle doesn't necessarily mean we have the ability to modify how we approach the solution. That's why just listening in and thinking through the process, it requires training. It requires training, repetition, maybe, I guess, online course plus webinar plus you coming out, depending on the degree to which folks want to be able to use these principles to improve their business. It may be a mix of all that. Just make an observation. All it is. It's so incredibly powerful, these principles, and they are so simple and fundamental. Then you can really make a big difference in whatever you're trying to outcome you're trying to achieve. But at the same time, it's just all about practice. It's about learning. These are learned skills. It's like you go to class and you learn software engineering, or you learn dentistry. You learn these are specific skills applied to certain skill. It's a certain trade, right? And this is different. This is sort of a sales, marketing type of or just general influence skills, and most of these things are not taught in most of the colleges, universities. This is a very custom educational platform in essence. That's why it's so important, because not too many people teach this. So that's why it's so wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, and it's still developing. That's the other thing.
Right.
Well, thank you so much, Chris. This has been a really great lunch and learn. I'm really excited that you came on, and this recording will actually go onto our YouTube, and it'll be in our Sunday newsletter as well, out to our entire audience. And hopefully they get a lot of value out of this. And I know I did. Every time I listen, even if it's on repeat, I'm hoping to catch more stuff and make it stick to memory, you know. But I look forward to taking your training as well. So thank you very much for coming on, and I hope you have a great winter break and happy holidays, everyone. We will see you in January. There's some really fun upcoming lunch and learns in the next year. So have a good week and the rest of December.
Happy holidays. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care.